Transformative Principal 44 with Mike St. Pierre. Thanks everybody for tuning into Transformative Principal this week. I've got a great interview with Mike St. Pierre, and I think you're really going to like it. He talks about some great things like strategic planning and how he gets people gathered together behind a common vision. I've been doing this podcast for 45 episodes now, getting close to a year, and I have learned a ton. I hope you've learned a ton also. What I'd like to ask you to do is to take a survey to help me understand how I can provide a better podcast for you, those who are listening to it. Just go to transformativeprincipal.com, take a couple of minutes, take the survey that's right there on that landing page, and give me some feedback about how I can make this show better for you.
Well, thanks, Jethro, for having me on the show today. Really appreciate it. My name is Mike St. Pierre, and I'm the president of Morris Catholic High School here in Denville, New Jersey, so a little distance from Alaska. Mm-hmm. And so we have a president-principal model, and I've served at Morris Catholic for the last, this is my 6th year, and I've been in administration now for just under a decade. So we're a Catholic high school co-ed, a small school, 400 students, and it's amazing. You know, like your work, it's no day is the same, no 2 days are the same. Certainly has its challenges, but as I say to our teachers, you know, I get to do this. It's a privilege. So that's what I do. I'm married, 16 years, and my wife Karen and I are blessed. We have 4 little kids, all under the age of 13.
Awesome. That's great. So tell me a little bit about the president-principal model. How does that work differently than a typical principal of the school?
Sure. This model is used by maybe about 55 or 60% of the private or in Catholic high schools around the United States. And it initially started to allow the principal to do, you know, the most important things of a principal, helping teachers, communicating with parents, improving the quality of instruction, things like that. And unfortunately, in a lot of private schools, principals were getting sucked into a lot of other things like fundraising and facility maintenance, things like that. So a lot of the Catholic high schools went to this president-principal model to really just free up the principal to focus on his or her most important things. So in our school, that's pretty much how it works. So, you know, I guess it might be the top of the org chart, but really a big part of my job is to keep things off of the principal's desk so he can focus on helping our teachers. So I focus on finances of the school, facilities, long-term planning, faith formation of our students, strategy. We have a board of trustees, so I interface with the board of trustees. And, you know, we kind of like to joke that Rob is our principal. He's in the house and I'm in the outhouse. So he focuses on the day-to-day things inside the walls of the school, and then I focus on the things outside of the walls of the school.
Okay, cool. So regardless of what type of model a school may have, we are often asked to wear different hats. Sometimes those are focusing more on the inside. Sometimes we need to step in, and even your principal consults with you, I imagine, on what you're doing to make sure you guys are aligned and giving the same types of information, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
So tell me about how your long-term planning works. What kinds of things are you looking for? Are you only looking at things not related to instruction, or is instruction part of what you're doing as well?
Good question. So for me, the only piece of instruction that I would really, quote unquote, touch is helping to recruit talent to our school, and then get their feedback as to how the school can do better. Otherwise, everything related to instruction is on the principal. So, you know, the principal and I, we have a weekly one-on-one meeting. That's every Monday, but we're talking every day, multiple times a day. And it's really convenient for us because our offices are right next to each other. So, you know, you really got to like one another because we're kind of roommates. And I've been really, really fortunate in that every principal I've had, we've had a really good understanding that, I don't want the principal's job, and I don't think the principal wants my job. So that makes it really clear. And it makes it also great for teachers because they really do know and understand what our two roles are. So it's like a marriage, and you got to work at it. But I guess, as they say, it really is all about communication.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what other aspects of the long-term planning are you looking at?
So we have a strategic plan which covers the next 3 years, and that's everything from the academic aspect of the school to the financial planning of the school, facility long-range planning of the school, our current capital campaign. And one thing we also did in this last plan was we built a whole section on what makes us unique. So we had a team of students, teachers, parents, and other stakeholders, and their whole task was to look at what might differentiate our school from some of our competitions. So it's a very densely populated state, and our particular county is not exempt from that. So we have some fantastic schools right close to us, and that's a blessing and a pain in the neck at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
because it really does force us, though, to be excellent. And so we have to be really clear what makes us different from one of our competitors. So that piece of strategic planning really involved everybody, because we had to all agree what are we going to be about over these next three years. And certainly the principal, he had to really love the characteristics and qualities that we eventually identified and then really all agreed to. So, because it's not just, hey, we're going to add, I don't know, an aspect of STEM, or it's not that, our world language program needs to be better. These are really qualities and characteristics of the school that are going to be pretty transformative, we think, moving forward. So, the principal really had to have a big hand in that.
Yeah. So, how do you conduct those sessions where you get people's input and you talk to them and find out what they really want? Get down to the details of how that actually happens in real life on a meeting to meeting basis.
Hmm. Well, that's a good question. We involved a lot of people in a very organized manner. So, we first started with looking at the good, bad, and ugly of our school. So, a good strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats assessment. And, we had to really put on the table, look, these are the couple of things that we're really not that good at and we need to get better at. And then we were also able to identify these are the things that we're amazing at and that make our school really pretty special. So we had an outside facilitator. We had an initial group of stakeholders who were part of the team, and we did it a little differently this time. We had a huge group, and then we eventually whittled it down to a much smaller group who could really help us get clear. And then we broke ourselves out into the various teams who were got a 3-year-old here.
No worries.
We broke ourselves into the different teams that would ultimately create the plan and identify the initiatives and objectives that we would commit to. So, the whole process did take us about 9 months, and then eventually we wanted to get the buy-in from all of our faculty members. So we asked every teacher in the building to sign off on the plan. And if they had any concerns, we wanted to know what those were, and so they had a chance to vocalize those. And then it went to our board of trustees, who approved it, and then ultimately to our bishop. So it was quite a process. I'm not going to lie, I was kind of happy when it was over, But
Mm-hmm.
I think it really showed us that slow produces a better product, even though we all want it to go fast. So that's kind of how it all went, and then we were able to kind of package it and brand it and build some nice pieces around it. I would say one of the highlights of the process was involving students, and so students were part of every working group. In the end, students were part of the video that we used to promote the plan, as well as a podcast of students talking about what was so cool about the plan. And I think for those students, that was a pretty fantastic experience. I don't know of a lot of schools that, involve students in really high level meetings about what the school was going to be about.
Yeah, that's great. So there's a ton of stuff that you talked about there, and I want to ask a couple of specific questions. How did you make the decision to whittle down to a small group from a huge group? What decisions were intended in that? What and did people drop off because they were no longer interested in participating, or had they had given enough? How did you determine who was going to be in that small group, and how did you communicate that to the stakeholders?
That's good. So initially, when we were in the brainstorming process, we wanted a huge swath of folks. So we invited all kinds of people, and the people that we really, really wanted there, we made sure that they had personal invitations. And then there were plenty of others that we gave what I would call kind of a soft invitation. And if they came, they came, and if they didn't, they didn't. So that already took the list and kind of shrunk it down. Then, as we started to ask for more of a commitment from different folks, again, some people self-selected off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, it sounds kind of strange, but sort of organically, it was okay. Now, that's different from how I'm doing a strategic plan right now with my kids' school, and it's really different. It's a much smaller community, and we're looking at a smaller window, smaller school. So we started with a small group and then let that group interface with bigger groups, but then always come back to the smaller group. So that's been a tighter process just because we could afford to have it that way. Also because I'm the facilitator, so I want to kind of keep it as organized as possible. Whereas at the high school, we had an outside facilitator, so I kind of just let him take the lead, and the spots where he wanted an intentionally smaller group, we were able to do that. In terms of how we communicated it out to folks, people on the outside really didn't need to know who was the team, but certainly to our teachers, many different parts of the process, I let them know, Mrs. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so, they're part of this, and here's why.
Okay. So you talked about getting personal invitations to those that you really wanted there. What did those personal invitations look like? Was that a phone call, a letter addressed directly to them? How did that work?
Yeah, definitely a phone call or an in-person conversation. And, it's basically, look, we're looking for a particular set of gifts. We think you have those gifts. Here's what the commitment would entail. Here's why it's a really important role for our school and our future. You can say no, that's okay. We'll still be friends, but we'd love you to consider it. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say we guilted them into it, but
Right.
Catholic schools are really good with guilt. Most people said yes. A few people said no, but we have to eat our own dog food there. If we really mean that they can say no, then that's okay. I'd rather somebody say, yeah, I can't do that commitment on the front end, than halfway through say, gee, I'm in over my head. I can't help you here. So it was really okay, and I've been pretty fortunate. I mean, most people I ask say yes. When they say no, there's always a good reason, and we're all big people. It's okay.
Yeah, totally. So you talked about people having specific gifts that you wanted to have as part of this strategic planning. How did you determine who you wanted to be there more than other people? What kinds of things were you personally looking for in that?
Well, ultimately, we wanted a group of people who would be team players, were loyal to the institution, were smart and creative and could think outside of the box, and would give us variety. So we just didn't. We always want to avoid groupthink. And if you get all English teachers or all phys ed teachers, you just aren't getting a variety of perspective and insight that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, variety, team players, people who are really committed to the school, um, just good-willed people, good-natured people, and also people who had enough time and space in their life at whatever place they are in their life that they could do it. So There were some people who are just really high level executives who are already busy, but could fit it in somehow miraculously. Then there
Hmm.
were other people who, maybe didn't have as much formally on their resume, but they were just great team members, and it was easier for them to find the time and space.
Hmm. That's awesome. One of the things that in the schools that I've worked in is trying to get a an adult involvement that is representative of our student demographics, making sure that um, people whose students who are minorities or English language learners are that their parents are involved somehow. Do you have any tips or ideas of how to make sure that people who might not be asked to come and be involved, how to get them involved?
Well, I think you've got a great approach there. It sounds like. It- I think a committee is a really great opportunity to like test somebody out
Mm-hmm.
for maybe a role that you might want them to have a few months down the road. And something like for us, the strategic planning process definitely was that. We wanted a variety, just like you guys have, racially, ethnically, financially, really everything. Even just like grade levels of students who are were represented. Um, and so I don't think I have any like secret tips there, but more just if there's an honest attempt to give representation, and especially one that has variety, I think that's usually that works out, and for us that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. And, I think it goes back also to having that personal invitation. It may take that connection on the phone or in person to say, we want you here, you have these gifts that we need, that I think sometimes we are afraid to do because of the language barrier or the perceived differences between us. But I think that personal invitation and that personal touch is really valuable and important. So I appreciate you including that.
Sure. Most people just aren't asked, I
Right.
mean, they're so busy in their really busy lives that they figure, well, if nobody asks, I've got plenty of other things to do. And I found most people are kind of flattered. Um, and they say, wow, you want me for this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big responsibility. And then it always goes well. And then afterwards, they're just real evangelists for the school.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. You talked earlier about one of your other job duties, and that is faith formation of your students. Will you talk a little bit about what that means?
Well, I'm pretty fortunate because in almost every aspect of my job, I have people around me who do the kind of frontline work. So, for example, we have two bookkeepers, we have a tuition manager, we have a head of fundraising. So I'm interfacing with them all the time on those things, but they're really doing the heavy lifting, right? In terms of faith formation, um, again, we're really fortunate. We have a chaplain, we have a campus minister. So I know that they're going to be overseeing the day-to-day operations of, if we have prayer services, if we have a September 11th event. I just know they have that on their radar. They might consult with me, and I know that I could always give them my 2 cents. But on the big things, I want to make sure that the people that we hire are in alignment with our value system as a school. So
Mm-hmm.
there's certain questions that you can ask that are both professional and also kind of mission based that get at a person's motivation for wanting to work in a Catholic school. So that's really important. And even when you see something, whether it's a coach or a teacher that's not in alignment with the mission, that's really my job to make sure whomever is supervising them that they address it in a professional and charitable way. Um, I think too, just in terms of our priorities and commitments as a school, I see my role as one of those that whether it's our strategic plan or our budgeting process, are we being faithful to our mission as a Catholic school? And that doesn't mean we're spending all of our money and all of our resources on faith formation, but we better not be paying it lip service at the same time. So, it's kind of just keeping the organization in line with our most important priorities.
Hmm. Yeah, and that is a really important thing, and I think all schools can relate to that. Even public schools, we want our students to grow up and be good citizens and productive members of society, and be able to have values. And while we're not, adhering to a specific religious standard, we are all trying to help our kids be the best kinds of human beings that they can be. So that's something that we as public school educators need to be aware of as well. And I know there are all kinds of schools around the country that do different things to help their students have those good values and all that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and yours, you just have the fortunate ability of all speaking the same language with that, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. We have a vocabulary that they're pretty familiar with, and so when we do things as a school, they're not really surprised. But every public school teacher that I know, they're all good people, and they're in education because they really care about kids, and so they want a community around those kids that really helps them be the best version of themselves.
Thank you so much for downloading and listening to this podcast. Please subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher, and please feel free to give us a rating on Stitcher Radio or on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about how much we're learning in this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones.